Do you know what the real difference is between people who build wealth and people who stay stuck in the same cycle of frustration year after year? It is not about intelligence. It is not about talent. It is not even about how many hours you work. The difference comes down to what you do in the first 60 minutes after you open your eyes every single morning. And I am going to prove it to you right now. For the past 42 years, I have studied the ancient texts of the Talmud and Kabbalah. My grandfather was a rabbi in Jerusalem. His father before him taught these same principles in a small synagogue in Poland before the war. This knowledge has been in my family for 7 generations. And what I have learned across all those decades of study is something that most people will never hear because nobody is willing to say it out loud. There are 3 specific morning mistakes that are literally keeping you broke. 3 habits that seem completely harmless. 3 things you probably did this very morning without even thinking about them. And the Jewish community figured out centuries ago that these 3 mistakes were silently destroying prosperity. So they stopped doing them, and that single decision changed everything. What I am about to share with you today is not theory. This is not some motivational speech designed to make you feel good for 20 minutes and then forget about it. This is a practical blueprint that I have personally used to transform my own financial life and that I have taught to thousands of people around the world. And here is the part that should get your full attention. The 3rd mistake I am going to reveal, the one I will share later in this video, is so destructive that the Talmud specifically warns against it. When you understand what it is and why it matters, you will never start your morning the same way again. But you need to stay with me until the end because these 3 mistakes work together like a chain. If you only fix 1 or 2 but miss the 3rd, you will not see the results. I'm going to show you exactly how to break all 3 at once. So stay here. This is going to change your life. I learned the foundation of what I'm about to teach you when I was 19 years old. My grandfather called me into his study one evening right after Shabbat. The candles had just gone out and the house was quiet. He looked at me with those deep, serious eyes and he said one sentence that I have never forgotten. He said, "The way you begin your day is the way you command your life." At that age, I did not fully understand what he meant. I thought mornings were just mornings. You wake up, you eat breakfast, you start your day. What could possibly be so important about the first hour? But then he opened the ancient texts and showed me passages that had been studied by rabbis for over 3,000 years. He showed me how the sages of the Talmud treated the morning not as a casual transition from sleep to wakefulness, but as the single most powerful spiritual window of the entire day. He explained that the first 60 minutes after waking were what the Kabbalists called the gateway of formation. It is the time when your energy, your intentions, and your spiritual frequency are being set for everything that follows. He told me that most people waste this window completely. They throw it away on habits that actually block prosperity, health, and clarity. And then they spend the rest of the day wondering why nothing works, why money never comes, why opportunities pass them by. He made me promise that I would study these teachings deeply and that when the time was right, I would share them with anyone who was ready to listen. That promise is why I'm here with you right now. The first time I truly saw these principles work, I was 23 years old. I had just finished my rabbinical studies and I was struggling financially. I had debts. I had no clear direction. I had tried budgeting. I had tried working longer hours. I tried asking for advice from people who seemed successful. Nothing changed. I was stuck. Then I remembered what my grandfather taught me. I went back to his notes, back to the specific passages he had marked in the Talmud, and I restructured my entire morning around these ancient principles. I eliminated the 3 mistakes I'm about to share with you. I replaced them with the exact practices the sages prescribed. Within 2 weeks, an opportunity appeared that I had not been expecting. Within a month, my financial situation began to shift in ways I could not explain through logic alone. Within 90 days, my entire life looked different. That is when I knew with absolute certainty that this was not just ancient philosophy. This was real, tangible, measurable power. Now you might be wondering, why does this work? The Talmud teaches that there are universal laws, spiritual laws, that govern prosperity, protection, and abundance. These laws existed before money, before governments, before modern economics. The ancient rabbis discovered these laws through thousands of years of observation, study, and practice, and they encoded them into specific behaviors, rituals, and daily habits that anyone can follow. When you align yourself with these laws, you stop fighting against the current of life, you start flowing with it, and that is when everything changes. If you are ready to break these chains of scarcity and activate the ancient wisdom of prosperity in your own life, write in the comments right now, "I break my morning chains today." I read every single comment. I want to see thousands of declarations right here. Do it now before we continue. Everything I am teaching you in this video is only the beginning. If you are serious about applying these ancient Jewish wealth principles to your life, I wrote a book called The Ancient Wealth Code. It contains the complete system, all 10 principles that Jewish families have used for 3,000 years to build, protect, and pass down wealth from generation to generation. This is not theory. This is the exact playbook. It is available right now in the description below and pinned in the first comment. Go get your copy today, because knowledge without action is worthless. Now, let me speak directly to what you are experiencing, because I know exactly what it feels like. You wake up every morning, and before your feet even hit the floor, there is already a weight on your chest. You're thinking about the bills. You are thinking about the money you do not have. You are thinking about how hard you have been working and how little you have to show for it. You go through your day doing everything you are supposed to do. You show up. You put in the hours. You try to make the right decisions. But at the end of the month, the numbers do not change. The account looks the same. The stress feels the same. The frustration grows a little deeper every single time. I know this because I have sat across from thousands of people who described this exact cycle to me, and every single time I traced it back to the same root cause. Their mornings were poisoned by habits that silently repelled abundance. Here is the truth that nobody wants to tell you. The conventional advice does not work. People tell you to just work harder, but you are already working hard. That is not the problem. People tell you to save more, but you cannot save what you do not have. People tell you to think positive, but positive thinking without spiritual alignment is like planting seeds on concrete. Nothing grows. The reason these methods fail is because they only address the surface. They deal with the physical level of reality while completely ignoring the spiritual laws underneath. The Talmud says that sustenance does not come from labor alone, but from the blessing placed upon it. This means that the energy, the intention, the spiritual alignment you bring to your actions determines what those actions produce. You can work 16 hours a day, but if your morning habits are blocking the flow of blessing, you will never see the results you deserve. And here is the lie you have been told your entire life. You have been told that wealth is purely a function of effort plus intelligence plus opportunity. That formula sounds logical, it sounds fair, but it is incomplete. And because it is incomplete, it fails millions of people every single day. The Jewish community understood something different thousands of years ago. They understood that wealth begins in the invisible realm before it ever manifests in the visible one. That is why the morning matters so much. That is why the first thing you do when you wake up determines whether you are opening the door to prosperity or slamming it shut. Here is the universal truth. In Kabbalah, we teach that every morning is a miniature rebirth. When you sleep, your soul ascends. When you wake, it returns to your body carrying fresh potential, fresh energy, fresh possibility. The first 60 minutes after that return are sacred. What you do in that window either activates that potential or destroys it. The ancient rabbis codified this into very specific teachings about what to do and what to avoid in the morning hours. And the 3 mistakes I'm about to reveal to you are the exact behaviors they warned against most urgently. I have personally witnessed what happens when people eliminate these mistakes. I have seen a man who had been unemployed for 2 years receive 3 job offers in a single week after changing nothing except his morning routine. I have seen a woman who was drowning in debt find an unexpected source of income within 10 days. I have seen business owners whose revenues had been flat for years suddenly experience breakthroughs that they could not explain. In every case, the transformation began with the morning. Now I'm going to reveal the 3 morning mistakes, and I want you to pay very close attention because I guarantee you are making at least 2 of these right now, probably all 3. This teaching comes directly from a combination of Talmudic wisdom, Kabbalistic principles, and practical observations that have been passed down through generations of rabbis in my family. This is not something I invented. I am simply the messenger. I am passing down what was passed down to me. But before I reveal these mistakes, you need to understand something fundamental. These are not random superstitions. Each of these mistakes violates a specific spiritual law. Each one disrupts a specific energy channel. and each one has been documented and warned against in sacred texts for centuries. What makes this teaching different from anything else you have heard is that it works at the spiritual level, not just the physical level. Second, it is based on thousands of years of proven observation. Third, it requires nothing more than awareness and discipline. You do not need to spend money, you do not need special tools. You just need to stop doing 3 things that you have been doing your entire life without realizing the damage they cause. And fourth, the results come fast. Most people notice shifts within the first week. The Talmud teaches that a person's livelihood is decreed from above, but their actions below can either open or close the channels through which that livelihood flows. This is the foundation of everything I am about to share with you. You are not trying to create wealth from nothing. The wealth has already been decreed for you. Your job is to stop blocking it. Let me begin with the first mistake. The first morning mistake that keeps you broke is checking your phone before you set your intention for the day. I know this sounds simple. I know almost everyone does it. And that is exactly why almost everyone struggles financially. Here is what happens when you wake up and immediately reach for your phone. You open your eyes. Your soul has just returned to your body, carrying fresh divine energy. And instead of directing that energy toward your purpose, your goals, your prosperity, you hand it over to other people. You start reading messages from people who want something from you. You start scrolling through news that fills you with anxiety. You start looking at social media where everyone appears to be doing better than you. In Kabbalah, we teach that the first thoughts and actions of the morning create what is called a spiritual imprint. This imprint sets the frequency for your entire day. When you give your first moments to your phone, you are literally programming your day for distraction, comparison, anxiety, and reactivity. You are telling the universe that other people's agendas are more important than your own, and the universe listens. The ancient rabbis had a very specific practice for the first moments of waking. Before anything else, before eating, before speaking to anyone, before engaging with the outside world, they would recite a declaration of gratitude and intention. They would acknowledge the return of their soul and consciously direct their first energy toward alignment with divine purpose. You do not need to be religious to apply this. The principle is universal. When you wake up, your first act should be to sit in silence for at least 2 minutes. Close your eyes, take 3 deep breaths, and say clearly, either out loud or in your mind, what you intend to create today. Be specific, not vague wishes. Specific intentions. I intend to attract a new source of income. I intend to make a wise financial decision. I intend to see an opportunity that I have been missing. Then, and only then, do you touch your phone. This simple shift, this 2-minute practice, will begin to reshape your entire relationship with money. I have seen it happen hundreds of times. The second morning mistake is even more destructive and almost nobody talks about it. The second mistake is speaking words of lack before noon. Let me explain what I mean. Most people wake up and within the first hour they say things like, I am so tired, I do not have enough time, I cannot afford that. Money is tight right now, I do not know how I am going to pay for this. These seem like innocent observations. They seem like you are just describing reality. But you are not describing reality, you are creating it. The Talmud teaches that life and death are in the power of the tongue. This is not a metaphor, this is a spiritual law. Your words carry creative force. When you speak words of poverty, scarcity, and limitation, you are literally commanding the spiritual realm to produce more poverty, scarcity, and limitation in your life. The Jewish sages were so serious about this that they developed specific linguistic habits to avoid ever speaking lack into existence. Instead of saying, I cannot afford it, they would say, it is not a priority for me right now. Instead of saying, money is tight, they would say, my abundance is being redirected. Instead of saying, I am broke, they would say, I am between blessings. This is not about lying to yourself. This is about understanding that your words are seeds, and your morning is the most fertile soil of the day. Whatever you plant in those first hours grows with tremendous power throughout the rest of the day. I personally adopted this practice decades ago and the shift was remarkable. I stopped using any language of lack before noon. 0 exceptions, no complaints about money, no expressions of scarcity, no verbal acknowledgements of financial pressure, and I noticed that within weeks, my financial circumstances began to mirror the new language I was using. Try this for just 7 days. From the moment you wake up until 12 noon, Do not speak a single word of lack, limitation, or poverty. Not to yourself, not to your spouse, not to your co-workers, not on the phone. Replace every impulse to complain about money with a statement of expectation. Watch what happens. You will be shocked. Now, here is the third mistake, and this is the one the Talmud warns about most severely. This is the one that I promised you earlier would change everything once you understood it. The third morning mistake that keeps you broke is beginning your day in a state of worry about the future. This is different from the first two mistakes. This one operates at a deeper level. This is about the emotional and spiritual frequency you carry during your first waking hour. Most people wake up and immediately begin worrying. They worry about the meeting they have later. They worry about the bill that is due next week. They worry about whether their business will survive. They worry about their children, their health, their retirement. And all of this worry happens in the most sacred window of the day, the gateway of formation that I described earlier. Here is what the Kabbalists teach about worry. Worry is not just an emotion, it is an act of negative faith. When you worry, you are placing your trust in a negative outcome. You are investing your spiritual energy into a reality you do not want. And because the morning hours carry amplified creative power, worry in the morning is exponentially more destructive than worry at any other time. The Talmud says, "Do not worry about tomorrow, for you do not know what the day will bring." Each day carries its own provision. This teaching is not about being irresponsible or ignoring problems. It is about understanding that worry blocks the very solutions you need. I learned this lesson deeply when I was in my 30s. I was going through a period of tremendous financial uncertainty. Every morning I would wake up with a knot in my stomach, running through worst-case scenarios in my mind, and every day things got worse. The more I worried, the more reasons I had to worry. It was a vicious cycle. Then I went back to the texts. I went back to what my grandfather had taught me, and I realized that my morning worry was not preparing me for problems. It was creating them. I was using the most powerful creative window of my day to manufacture the exact future I was afraid of. So I made a decision. Every morning for 30 days, instead of worrying, I would spend my first 15 minutes in a state of active trust, not passive hope, active trust. I would sit quietly and consciously choose to believe that my provision was already arranged, that the solutions were already in motion, that the opportunities were already on their way. The results were extraordinary. Within the first week, a payment I had been waiting on for months arrived unexpectedly. In the second week, a connection I had made years ago reached out with a business opportunity. By the end of the 30 days, my financial situation had completely reversed. Not because I had worked harder, not because I had found some clever strategy, but because I had stopped using my mornings to block what was already trying to reach me. This is the principle. Worry closes channels. Trust opens them, and the morning is when you choose which one to activate. Now let me share something deeper with you because I want you to understand why these three mistakes are so interconnected. The Talmud teaches that three things expand a person's consciousness: a beautiful home, a beautiful spouse, and beautiful vessels. The rabbis debated what this meant for centuries, but the deeper interpretation from the Kabbalistic tradition is this: your external reality is always a reflection of your internal state. Beautiful vessels means that the containers of your life, your habits, your routines, your words, your thoughts must be refined and intentional. When your containers are polluted, what flows into them becomes polluted too. Your morning routine is the primary container of your day. When you fill that container with phone distractions, words of lack, and emotional worry, you have polluted the vessel, and nothing clean can flow through a polluted vessel. I will be honest with you. There was a time in my life when I knew all of this intellectually, but I was not applying it consistently. I would practice for a few days and then slip back into old habits. I would check my phone first thing. I would complain about finances to my wife over breakfast. I would lie in bed, running through anxious scenarios about the future. And during those periods of inconsistency, my finances reflected it perfectly. Every time I abandoned the morning discipline, I could trace a direct decline in my financial flow within 2 to 3 weeks. Every time I returned to it, the flow resumed. That is when I understood that this is not a one-time fix. This is a daily practice. The ancient rabbis did not do these things occasionally. They did them every single morning without exception, and that consistency is what built the foundation for generational wealth. Over the past 4 decades, I have taught these 3 principles to thousands of people from every background imaginable. I have seen entrepreneurs double their revenue within 90 days simply by restructuring their first hour. I have seen families who lived paycheck to paycheck for years break free into financial stability. I've seen individuals who believed they were cursed or unlucky suddenly experience what they could only describe as miracles. And in every single case, the transformation began when they stopped making these 3 morning mistakes. They did not need more education. They did not need a better job. They did not need a lucky break. They needed to stop sabotaging themselves during the most powerful hour of their day. Here is why this matters more right now than ever before. We are living in a time of extraordinary economic uncertainty. Inflation is rising. Markets are unstable. Just this year, we have seen major economic shifts that have left millions of people feeling more anxious about money than ever before. The cost of living continues to climb while wages stay flat. New tariff policies and trade tensions are disrupting industries worldwide. People are feeling the pressure everywhere. But here is what I want you to understand. These ancient Jewish principles have survived every economic crisis in human history. They worked during the famines of ancient Egypt. They worked during the persecutions of medieval Europe. They worked during the Great Depression. They work during recessions, inflations, and market crashes because they are not based on economic conditions. They are based on universal spiritual laws that never change. When everything around you is chaos, these 3 morning practices are your anchor. When the news tells you to panic, these principles tell you to trust. When the world says there is not enough, these teachings remind you that abundance is your divine inheritance. Let me summarize what you have learned today. First, stop checking your phone before you set your morning intention. Your first energy belongs to your purpose, not to other people's agendas. Second, stop speaking words of lack before noon. Your tongue has creative power and the morning amplifies that power. Third, stop waking up in a state of worry. Worry is negative faith and it blocks the provision that is already trying to reach you. You now have the exact understanding that Jewish families have used for thousands of years to protect and build their